Hello. As this course proceeds, you will eventually see a chart of health indices for rural communities versus urban communities. And what I was very surprised to find out is that for many rural communities, there's many indicators that indicate rural folk have poorer health than they do in the context of urban communities. So as we begin to look at this course, which is entitled Healthy Rural and Small Town Communities, I encourage you to be thinking about the context of the community within which you live, within which you have experience, and perhaps within which you have worked. My name is Wayne Caldwell, and I'm the instructor for this course, and I look forward to this journey with you. On a weekly basis, we will be sharing with you a video of myself speaking to some of the content in the course, along with many other contexts and many other speakers who will also make contributions as well. With each week, we will try to have the screen set up behind me, but I encourage you to also take a look at the slide notes which are provided, because those notes provide a detailed up-close exposure to the presentation which I will be giving. So bear with me, we'll get through this together, and by all means, please contact me when you have questions, and hopefully as we go through the course content, it will make eminent sense. So who I am, Wayne Caldwell. I'm a professor here in the School of Environmental Design and Rural Development at the University of Guelph, and my experience and background is in the profession of rural planning. I worked as a land use planner, community planner with the County of Huron for approximately 25 years, and have been here at the university in various capacities for a period since then. My life working as a professional planner brought me into contact with very different and multiple sources of information and different tools and practices whereby we work with communities to try to make a difference. My academic background is undergraduate and master's in geography and a PhD in planning, and for me it's been this interest of blending academia with professional practice. When we look at the topic of healthy rural and small town communities, the question is what brought me to that topic. And I think in many ways I had worked around it throughout my career, but several years ago I was invited by a group of public health professionals to partner with them to develop a document which you will see in time and be made fully aware of, which is the Healthy Rural Communities Toolkit, a guide for rural municipalities. And that toolkit got me thinking about many of the connections between planning, community health, and I use that term generally, which we'll get into more detail as time goes by, and of course public health. Because if we think of the health of our residents, and if we think of the health of our communities, the question is, how do they make progress towards better health outcomes, to better outcomes within the community itself? As mentioned, this document, Healthy Rural Communities Toolkit, is on a website which is at www.ruralhealthycommunities.ca. I encourage people, in fact, it's one of the required assignments to take a look at that website, or I should say one of the required readings, to take a look at that website in some detail. And I think you'll find lots of good material there that's also connected into the course itself. As mentioned, we'll have a slide deck each week with myself speaking to it. Each slide deck is probably in that range of 15 to 20 slides, and will hopefully provide some direction, and encourage you to look at it in each week because it will provide clarification on projects and assignments and things of that nature as well. So for this first week, I hope to familiarize yourself with the course content and the course outline. Spend lots of time this week looking at the outline. Introduce yourself to me and the kinds of things I've done in my career. You might want to have a look at my website itself. I don't know that it's specifically listed. It is in the course outline. It's waynecaldwell.ca. And the course itself, we'll look at objectives, we'll look at the course requirements, we'll look at the weekly schedule, and introduce the assignments. I will mention that our goal is to have the entire course up and running for the start of January, but certainly we will have the first 6 weeks available for folks to peruse at that point. So the materials that will be essential for you this week to look at include the PowerPoint that's again available in Course Link, the course outline, which is now posted to Course Link as well. And as mentioned, there are videos available throughout the course, throughout the semester, for each week, which will provide direction and guidance to you. There will be readings identified for each week, which are part of the syllabus. I've made an intentional decision to try to keep things, for example, the first few weeks, you'll find there's more readings around Reading Week, You'll find it's a little bit lighter and a little bit lighter towards the end of the semester in terms of the readings, realizing that there's projects to be completed and so on. And the question throughout today and throughout the course in general is, how do these materials relate to your perspective on rural and small town communities? And I will recognize at the outset that we have a group of planning students in the MSc program here at the University of Guelph, and we have a group of students in the Masters of Public Health program as well. I realize some of you will be based here in Guelph, and some of you will be based internationally, all the way, I suspect, from New Zealand to Alberta, to other destinations perhaps as well. So we'll try to work with everyone to make sure that the course content works for you, and that we accommodate and provide the flexibility that will be required to be successful in your work through the course. As an overview, in terms of healthy rural and small town communities, we will, and these are some general statements at the outset, there will be a significant focus on sustainability, blending the economic, the environmental, and the social. And you'll get lots of that next week as we get into more detail with the course topic. Again, we try to bring focus to the planning side of things, those folks who may end up working as professional planners or working in the planning system, and those people who might work in public health. And I will mention that, of course, I've spent much of my career working with the land use planning side of things, but equally I've done a number of projects with public health, all the way from developing active transportation plans to guidelines to other work in the rural community as well. We will find next week that I subscribe to a broad-based definition of planning, and that influences this course in some significant ways. So we will look not only at things which you might predict to be here, such as active transportation and the built environment, we will also look at things such as housing, and we will look at things such as immigration and welcoming communities. The course will have a material focus. That's where my experience tends to come from. That's where the materials in general come from. But I do encourage people that if you're working or have an interest in other locations, that you feel very comfortable and know that it's acceptable within the course to reflect on those other locations. I want this course to work for you and to work in a way that leads to good outcomes in terms of your learning journey. And of course, I will also mention that there's a significant practical focus to the materials that are being brought for you. There's academic references, of course, but if there was a choice between an academic reference in a journal somewhere and a practical document that would help you in your skills development, we've gone with that practical document, and I hope that works for you. The course outline, and I'm going to spend a fair bit of time going through the course outline in some detail, and I would encourage you, whether you want to print it off, but make sure it's available, because consider the course outline to be the template, if you like, or the contract between myself and yourself in terms of how things proceed. There's always a risk of picking up something incorrectly from a brief presentation, but do stick to the course outline. We'll put announcements online to help you moving forward with that. So a number of objectives that we've identified in the course outline to understand the key elements, issues and approaches to healthy and rural town small communities. We've intentionally, I should say at the outset, used that term rural and small town. Sometimes people will understand rural to include that, and sometimes they may not. But we want it to be clear that it's about the dispersed spaces within rural Ontario, within rural Canada and elsewhere, but also the towns and villages that are part of the rural environment. We want to provide you with an understanding between the relationship between planning and public health, and I've seen that evolve significantly over my career, and we'll spend time looking at that. And I want you to go away from the course understanding that there are some unique elements to rural communities that need to have focus brought to them. And those elements, that rural perspective, I think is critical in working and living within rural communities. And as mentioned earlier, we'll also have a broad-based perspective on rural planning. There will be elements of design and land use, just as we'll look at issues of local food and immigration policy, for example. If you have any questions in those course objectives, feel free to flip me an email. A number of specific outcomes. So at the end of the course, what would you hope to have accomplished in terms of your own skill set? One of which is to identify the relationship between the social determinants of health and community well-being. And again, there's readings and work in subsequent weeks that will take you in that direction. To look at key planning approaches that can help achieve healthy rural and small town communities. To understand, as mentioned in the objectives as well, that relationship between planning and public health. To identify a number of examples that identify strategies for rural healthy communities. And within the toolkit that I mentioned earlier, There are a number of examples or best practices that are identified. How to use various planning tools and processes, and understanding, of course, the mandate of various levels of government. This will come to you largely from a municipal community perspective, but there are important roles for the provincial and federal governments as well. We've also tried to provide you with significant opportunities for student involvement and engagement. We try to make it practical. Much of it is self-directed. I always concern myself with a course which is a reading course. How do I make sure that you are getting the most out of it as you possibly can? And it speaks to your taking a leadership role in terms of your own deliverables as well. There's opportunities for teamwork, and we've scheduled 3 weeks where we will try to bring people together. We'll provide a date for that on CourseLink, and recognizing that some of you won't be able to meet here in Guelph, and we'll either accommodate you through various electronic processes such as Zoom or Skype. There will also be the opportunity to connect with me personally if that doesn't work. So again, trying to provide opportunities for you to make it as interactive as possible as a course. As mentioned, we will have weekly videos, lucky with me, and but we'll also provide significant input from other people who have real interest in this topic. 2 people in particular that have provided us with multiple interviews. Dr. Charles Gardner, who's the Medical Officer of Health for Simcoe Muskoka, and George McKibben, who's a private planning consultant with the firm McKibben Wakefield. And again, he's worked with OPPI, the Ontario Professional Planners Institute, and CIP, the Canadian Institute of Planners, in the development of materials related to healthy communities. And we have several other people who will be joining us by video over this semester. The websites and readings, again, encourage you to look at the course outline in more detail, and hopefully you have the course outline in front of you at the moment. But Rural Healthy Communities, which I mentioned, and then 3 others which we flagged there, the Canadian Institute of Planners, the Ontario Healthy Communities Coalition, and the Middlesex County Community Design section of their website with the health unit there, and the Ontario Professional Planners Institute. We've not specifically identified the need for you to purchase a textbook. There's 3 identified there that provide some relevance to the topic that you might find to be of interest. But generally, the websites and other readings that we will have posted online for you should suffice. People are always interested in what is the summary of the proposed course requirements. There are 5 things that we're asking you to do. The table in front of us at the moment, I'm going to go through this in a bit more detail in a second, identifies what those 5 topics are. It identifies their weight and identifies the weeks within which they are due. You can normally assume that the course is organized into the weeks of the semester, and the due dates would be the Friday of that week at 4:59. I've intentionally chosen Friday at 4:59 so that it hopefully doesn't ruin your weekend. The first assignment, and this is one you'll want to think about fairly quickly because it's due, if I recall correctly, in week 3, and it's worth 15%, and it's really to get you into the course content immediately. And again, look to the course outline for all of these assignments for more detail, but it's intended to get you into the course content immediately, and it invites you to think about concepts related to healthy rural communities. Ideally, you would start this following the materials for next week, but basically we're asking you to select a community and prepare a short paper, a maximum of 1,000 words, on whether you consider that community to be a healthy community. Looking at the concepts and readings that you've done connected to the videos and other content. And invite you to think about the social determinants of health, because I think that's really quite important. The community you select, it could be your own community, it could be the community you've lived in the past, but try to make it as personal as possible in terms of looking at the topic. Again, we'll talk about this next week a little bit, but if you have any questions, flip me an email. Assignment 2, I hope you find to be of interest. It's a walkability audit, and we'll be providing you with a link to an appropriate form or template to follow. And basically what we're asking you to do is select a small town, a community, a city street, a city block, perhaps where you live or where you have lived. Complete the audit, and ideally, and I should say more than ideally, what you're expected to do is to take 10 photos of things that impressed you as good things or things you saw as real problems when you're out doing the walkability audit. And those 10 pictures with a paragraph become the main bulk of the assignment. And then also asking you, in addition to that, to do a 250-word reflection on what you observed and how generally this fits together. That's due at the end of week 5 and is worth 15%. And for this, there's the opportunity to work in pairs, and hopefully for some of you that won't be possible. My belief is that if you work in pairs, you'll get more out of the assignment, you'll learn from other people, and the assignment in that case would be handed in as a single document with 2 sets of names, with 2 names on it. Assignment 3 is the active transportation plan. This is one of the more major components of the course, so worth 30%, and you're given a significant length of time within which to complete this. Again, inviting you to work in teams of 3 to 4, again thinking that that dynamic will work well. Lots of detail within the course outline. Have a look at that. We'll talk about this in more detail as we get further along in the semester. But basically 3 key steps that you're being invited to complete. The first is, step 1, is a review of an existing active transportation plan. Look for an active transportation plan. There's many online. Some are long, some are short, some are in Canada, some are in the US. Look wherever you might choose to, and do a bit of a debrief of that, and do a bit of an evaluation. What in it you like, what you don't like, again, there's a certain length which is prescribed for that in the course outline. The second part of that is assume that you're working for in a municipal context, and somebody's asked you to design a process for developing an active transportation plan. And that process would go through things such as who might be involved if we were doing this, how long might it take to complete it, what resources do we need, what are some of the basic components of research that we need to be completed. And that process becomes helpful in thinking through what it might look like. And the third step is creating a basic active transportation plan. And I use the word basic intentionally because you probably don't have enough time to do it in fact, you don't have enough time to do it in its full scope. I was looking at one which was in that range of 250 pages long. I certainly do not expect that with all kinds of research in that prior example. But with the time that you've got and with the weight that's attached to this and the suggested length included within the course outline, do your best to identify components of what would be included within an actual transportation plan. Hopefully that will work for you. Again, we'll have an opportunity for discussion as the semester proceeds. There is a cautionary note, and that cautionary note is to simply scale this back to a size and amount of work that is reasonable within the time frame and within the allocated 30% that's provided to this topic. Again, any questions, let me know. The fourth assignment is what I'll refer to as journal reflections. We have a period of the latter half of the course where there are topics in week 7, 9, 10, and 11, and there are no specific assignments attached to them, but with the exception of this journal and reflection, that's important content that I want to make sure people look at. And again, within the course outline, there's a suggested length for this report. It's a personal reflection. It's a journal of the things that impressed you. It is only worth 10%, and the length of it is limited for that reason. But I want to make sure that people look at the content, review it, and become familiar with it for those 4 weeks. Assignment 5 is allowing you the opportunity to select a given topic within the Healthy Rural Communities Toolkit. There are 13 actions which are suggested. We're inviting you to take one of those actions and look at it in more detail. Select a topic, select a case study area perhaps, review the topic, discuss how it applies as it relates to the selected study area. So for example, if I randomly opened this up, I just turned it to planning for special age groups. You might choose to look at a topic of that nature in more detail, or air quality, look at it in more detail as it relates to healthy rural and small town communities. And identify an action. You will see that in the appendices of this document, there are a number of specific cases that are identified. I've just identified it here, opened to pages 54 and 55. And there's 2 examples, one for the County of Haliburton, one for the County of Huron. Invite you to look at a specific example in the communities you're looking at and prepare a 1-pager as part of the assignment that reflects that. Again, the length is suggested there, a maximum of 2,000 words, and due at the end of the semester. I will also mention for this and with a couple of the others, we will come together as a group and talk about it. Those who can meet in person and those who might need to connect by other means. The weekly schedule and the topics which are identified is provided for your assistance. There's more detail included within that weekly schedule than what you see right here. And again, you won't be able to read this on my screen behind me, but if you look at the course outline, you'll see that it's identified by week with the topics and assigned readings and videos. The assignments are identified and the due dates are identified as well. So I'm not going to go through this in detail now. I invite you to look at it. I'll simply say that it follows a week-by-week schedule with dates attached to it. We, of course, have certain opportunities where there's bits of breaks. There's the reading week, the winter break, the week of February the 18th. And looking at the next page, there are opportunities where, again, we've reduced the readings a little bit to accommodate your interests and the need to do other things as well. The assignments, as mentioned, are identified there. We've tried to put a fair bit of the weight of the course up front. That initial assignment that starts in week 2 due week 3. The walkability audit is due in the first half of the course, and the active transportation component is due the week of week 8, if I've got that correctly. And the last 2 assignments are in the last 2 weeks, but you can certainly work on those earlier in the semester to make progress as well. I think I've pretty much covered the first assignment, so I won't go into further detail here. Again, it's that notion of selecting a community that you're familiar with and applying some of the concepts that you will be introduced to within week 2, and doing that in a way that allows you to offer commentary on whether that community is a healthy rural and small town community. So with that, I say thanks for deciding to take the course. I hope that you find it to be engaging. We've tried our best to bring different perspectives to the course that will make it interest. We've tried to identify assignments that will relate for you, and we've tried to do it in a way that's as interactive as possible. So best wishes over the course of the semester, and if you have questions, I'm available by email, and we will have a discussion board going as well. So thank you again. Hello everyone. Since we initially developed the materials in the previous video recording, we've created an option actually for assignment number 5 to provide a little bit more flexibility. As you will note, assignment 5, a more detailed overview of a given topic, and we've created a second option. The second option actually builds upon the previous active transportation assignment that you will have completed. Assignment number 3 is active transportation. Assignment number 5 allows us to look at more detail and some of the content included within the Healthy Rural Communities Toolkit. Now, the first option is included and has been previously discussed, so I won't go over it in more detail. It is independent of the active transportation plan and simply follow the directions and instructions included in week 1 and in subsequent weeks as well, and you will be fine with that process. What we've added, though, is this notion that people might be more interested in pursuing active transportation in a little bit more detail. So to achieve that, we've done the following. If you want to do this, it would allow you to add to the previous active transportation plan in lieu of assignment number 5, which becomes what we have here in front of us now. So if you're to choose to build on your active transportation plan, you would select one of the 13 actions included within the toolkit. And once you've done that, you would select a specific topic. And a good example would be community design or planning for special age groups. And you can see how planning for special age groups, you could expand upon the topic of active transportation in a very specific kind of way. Again, if we look at the toolkit, there are other examples. Not all of them will fit, but some of them certainly do. For example, looking at tourism, or planning for special age groups, or community design, or access to local food potentially, or nature, or climate change would be all examples of things that you could say, how would that topic be impacted through active transportation, and how might active transportation connect to it? So you'd select one of those topics, you would review the topic and consider how it would enhance or change your active transportation plan. Next, you would identify suggested actions or policies that could be, in fact, added to the active transportation plan. So, for example, if you were looking at aging in place, what might active transportation look like in that context, and build additional policies, make your active transportation plan more thorough and more detailed. You would submit a revised active transportation plan as part of the assignment. And we'd encourage you to use a different font color so actually know what's new and what was there previously. And also an expectation that you would provide an addendum which would be a reflection or a discussion of the changes that you've made and why you've made that. We've included some maximums, so it's suggested that if you went this route, your active transportation plan could be increased by as much as 10 pages to cover the new content that you would be looking at. and the addendum would be a 750-word discussion. You can work in pairs, and the other details remain the same in terms of due date and in terms of discussing this in our final class. So I hope that this explanation is clear, provides a little bit more flexibility, allows people to pursue what might be a real interest of theirs. But certainly, as always, if you have any questions, let me know by email or in person during our class meetings.